Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we are coming to you with the most topical of video releases, given recent Codex drops. Because I suspect that with the Necron Codex coming out, a lot of people might be considering Necrons. And some of you might be new to the faction, or maybe new to the game altogether. And if you are, you gotta start somewhere with knowing what is exactly going on with these metallic skeleton guys. Because I'm gonna be honest, looking at them on the surface, I really didn't know how much was going on below the waves, so to speak. And if you are going to get into this army, I think it would be a better experience for you if you knew what that was. So I think it would, for us, we're just going to start where the Necrons started. Break them down straight from the beginning. Start with, where they came from back in the old days, and then take you all the way through to where the setting's at now. But that means we got to go back to the earliest events of Warhammer history, John.
Yes.
The War in Heaven.
We're talking about, this is predating the War in Heaven. The War in Heaven happens part of the way through the Necron story. The Necron story really starts with them having their own massive empire before the Eldar that rivaled the old ones. But they are cursed in that empire with extremely short lives in their organic bodies. They die very early compared to the immortality that the old ones seem to have. And as they are sort of suffering under this condition, they keep asking desperately from the old ones, hey, we want to live longer. Can you help us extend our lives? And the old ones, sort of seeing the ability of hubris and overambition in the race, goes, no, we will not help. We will not provide you with immortality. That we cannot. That is something that we should not do.
Mm-hmm.
The Necronter, as they're called at the time, get so upset with this that they proceed to start going to war with the old ones while they are just normal people. While that's going on, they happen to meet the Satan, which are essentially the materium gods. They are these giant star-eating entities that will consume entire solar systems for power. That go, hey, you're fighting this war against the old ones, you want to live forever, we can make that happen. And they go to a character called Sazerac, who is known in the setting now as the Silent King, and goes, okay, you will be given immortality in exchange for being our servants. You will fight our wars for us. We do not have a huge population. We are 12 entities, and you will help us destroy the old ones because they are utilizing the warp and kind of spreading it around, and that is destroying us as a people. They decide to work together, and they go to war against the old ones. And this war lasts for thousands of years. And as that's going on, it sort of comes to a head at the emergence of these things called the Enslavers, which are these pre-chaos warp entities that sort of feed on psychic creatures and absolutely decimates the old ones, leaving nothing left. But over the course of this time frame, the Necrons realize that they've been duped. They have been forced into these metal bodies against their will, with very little autonomy, with very little choice. Most of the actual civilians no longer have a consciousness that they can verbalize. Mm-hmm. They are just left in these robotic shells, leaving only the toppest echelon with the full capability of freedom. And even them are still contractually obligated to the Satan that they can't do anything. They can't live their lives or have a society anymore. And so the Silent King, hating this, and after they've defeated the old ones, in secret gets a bunch of his cryptecs, which are like scientists for the Necrons, to start building these giant weapons called hypercannons that utilize the powers of stars to create massive beams of energy that will overload the Satans and shatter them into pieces. And when that happens, he can use things called tesseracts to essentially use Pokeballs to capture the Satan and entrap them. And over the course of another couple hundred years, they do this. They perform this rebellion at the cost of millions upon millions and millions and millions of lives. They're capable of just absolutely annihilating the Satan, turning them into these shards that they can use for their own means, and gaining their freedom.
Kinda.
They're still in metal bodies. They haven't figured that one out yet. But afterwards, the Eldar are now ascendant. With no Great Old Ones around, they take over for them. And with the Necrons busy fighting their rebellion, they don't stop the Eldar from becoming ascendant after the War in Heaven, basically allowing the Eldar to take over the galaxy and win. Seeing the psychic might of the Eldar and seeing how powerful they are at their peak, the Silent King goes, okay, we're not going to go to war a third time.
Yeah, our nose is too bloodied from our first fist fight. We cannot do this again.
Yeah. On top of that, he is feeling an immense amount of shame, because not only did he make the decision to enslave his entire people to these star gods, but then he also made the decision to rebel against said star gods, costing millions upon millions and millions of them their lives, while they were enslaved in metal bodies and capable of protesting against his actions. He got to tell them what to do. He completely owned them. So he severs his ability to entirely own them after putting them to sleep. He puts all of them to sleep in Tomb Worlds and then leaves the galaxy, intent on either never returning and allowing them to figure it out themselves in his own shame, or coming back if things look terrible and he needs to save his people. Then he leaves. He leaves the galaxy for forever.
Eons. I mean, literally eons. The timeline gets wishy-washy between, old god time to now.
Yes.
But a long time. We're talking glacial time scales here.
Yeah, before the first millennium. This is when all of this occurs. Now we're going to fast forward, right? We're going to fast forward a very long time because they're all asleep to the 34th millennium, which is when the Necrons wake up. They slowly start rising from their tombs, normally from mining that the Imperium is doing, or different, just the degradation of technology is preventing normal fail safes to go off, and it's just causing Tomb Worlds to awaken. And as one starts awaken, they all start awakening. But this is not happening the way that it was intended to. Originally, they were all supposed to wake up at the same time and sort of take over the galaxy in one fell swoop. It does not happen. Between code getting corrupted, all of the stuff that happened with chaos, things didn't go the way they should. And that has left very, very little leadership to actually control these mindless automatons. So some of these Tomb Worlds will wake up with only the warriors and the swarms of caneptic robots who can only do so much. They have routines to follow, but they can't make decisions. And so they just take over the planet and just sort of sit there.
Yeah, I mean,
waiting for direction.
Instead of a big bat signal, you end up getting these small insular groups led by a handful of individual nobles when these temple wakes up normally. But you're going to have a couple of people, a couple of Necrons that have sentience, they're nobles, and then a whole bunch of creations that cannot think. However, they are detached from the other group of scattered creations a couple of systems over. And when they do make contact, as you might sometimes imagine, there's sometimes some dispute between these haughty nobles over what the right action is or who gets to make the calls.
And that only gets worse. Because during the process where they became Necrons instead of Necronter, they became these robots, many of the lords and overlords suffered psychic breaks in ways. Some of them didn't seem to be affected at the time, but then when they got put to sleep for 35 million years, they now wake up with these horrifying memories and thoughts and concepts in their head, as some of them got to feel what their subordinates felt, the moment they lost their bodies and sentience. Some of them their brain breaks and they don't remember becoming a Necron. They still believe they have flesh and blood and they're fighting against rebellious lords. Very similar to the Flesh Eater courts and like AOS. There's some of them that are still just bound by their old policies of honor and, duty to the Silent King, so they just choose to do nothing. Like, there's so many individual stories in here of why they don't immediately start taking over. And it's a good thing, too, because the Necrons, should they have all joined together immediately and gone to war, would have decimated the Imperium in its current state, and also where it was. I mean, this is their normal weaponry can like shoot holes through Chimera tanks. Mm-hmm. They reassemble themselves. They have like literal guns that are fueled by stars to kill gods. They also created this thing called the Blackstone, which is this material that nullifies the warp and warp energies. And that's going to come up later, but that starts popping up all over the place as these tomb worlds are popping up, which gets the Inquisition interested in what's going on. And as the Inquisition is like investigating, they are starting to notice that some of these are coalescing together into a big group. And for about 6 or 7 millennium, you have like this coalescing happening under a name called Imhotep the Stormlord, who is like the overlord in the setting. Like he starts getting everyone together. He's like an upstart king. Very much like the old medieval style of getting all of these other lords and overlords to swear fealty to him, and he's going to recreate the Necron Empire. Under him, he can bring you to ascendancy again.
Yeah, it does also kind of remind me of like orc tribes. Like, everyone's fighting until someone big comes in and cracks both of your skulls. Like,
yeah.
Now you work for him.
Yeah, and, their reactions to other Xenos races also is infected by this. Like, there's stories out there of Xenos and Tau working together to deal with problems, or like becoming friends. Like, obviously they don't stay friends because of what they are, but they're not just soulless, mindless monsters. Like, they will communicate. The problem is most of the other people see them as soulless machine monsters. They kind of are.
I mean, even the Blood Angels worked with Necrons. Like,
we don't talk about Mount Ward.
It happened. It happened.
Yeah, it did. That's a fact. We can talk about it later. And then, right, now we're going to fast forward to now. We are in the 41st millennium, and some stuff has changed for the Necrons.
Oh, buddy, has it. This is where I start to know more stuff. But if you're getting into the Necrons, this is the part that's most important, because it anchors you for, like, what is happening right now, and then where they're potentially going. Because there's some foreshadowing that's happening.
Necrons were a faction, as a brief history of their history in the setting, as a faction that had just enough lore for the people that played them, but not a lot to really go off of. They didn't have their own novels, really. They didn't really have their own, like, stuff. It was enough to fill maybe 30 pages, and for people to go, oh, that's the cool thing they do. They're just like this slow threat that's eventually going to be a huge problem. And then they brought back, like, the character for them.
Yeah.
And that is the Silent King. The Silent King returns to the galaxy in the 41st millennium after seeing the Tyranids in the galactic void. Right? So before the Tyranids showed up, he witnessed what they were doing to other galaxies outside of ours. And he's seeing that went, they're going to come for my former empire. They're going to come for my galaxy, and they're going to eat all of the organic matter there, and then my people will never be able to return to bodies ever again, and will be trapped in the thing that I trapped them in for all of eternity. Mm-hmm. And goes, I gotta go back. I gotta go back. So he does. He goes back to the Milky Way galaxy.
Which is colossal. Like, I cannot state how big of a deal that is. Like, most of the time people would say, like, oh, that's like a Primarch coming back, but this is bigger than a Primarch coming back. Like,
no, this is like the Emperor of Mankind coming back for the Necrons.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's the Necron. This is like colossal in terms of impact. And the model is amazing.
Yeah, it's kick-ass. Like he has so much knowledge and capability and understanding of the universe, because again, his mind has not degraded. So he understands everything. And he sees the Tyranids as this massive apocalypse threat.
Because they are.
And then he comes back to the galaxy and goes, oh, the Eldar, cool, we used to fight you. Are you still an Empire? Can you help us fight the Tyranids? Absolutely not, you're about to die. Oh, that's bad. Oh, what else is going on? Oh, that warp concept that, like, existed? What's going on there? Oh, they created evil gods that are nightmarish and are killing everything. Oh, that's bad. What about over there? Oh, the humans. What are you? You're a young new race? I mean, what can you... Oh, you are the reason why everything's broken. Got it. Cool,
I know what I'll do. I'll look over here. Look, a new upstart race. They could be allies. The Tau, you're cool. Oh, there's 5 of you. Never mind. Like...
Yeah. And, then he goes, oh, the Tyranids are started invading. How's the attacks been? Oh, you've made it worse. Got it. Cool. And so he's seeing this situation for what it is, and that is that this ever-consuming, hyper-intelligent entity is attacking the galaxy and is going to take every loss and turn it into a victory. And that's what it's been doing this whole time. He tries to warn the younger races and like the old races, and they just go, no, you're a monster too. Now, in their defense, he did say stuff like, we're going to take all your bodies for our own people, and also you can't do space travel anymore.
For a smart guy, he's awfully dumb.
Yeah.
Great pitch, dude. Let's work on your approach just a little bit. Yeah. I do love, though, like, as he walks into the galaxy, it's like that scene from Community. He, like, walks in with the pizza boxes. Everything's on fire. He has no context for anything. Everything's a shit show.
Yeah, and so, like, he kind of comes to them with this, like, logical decision, and everyone just goes, no, that's stupid. So he walks away. He doesn't do what I think the Emperor would have done in that situation, and then start killing everything. He just goes, okay, I'm going to go build a sandcastle. Boop, boop. And so he goes back to where, like, some of his tomb worlds are and starts collecting them, bringing them into the fold, dealing with them. He meets Imhotep the Stormlord, and it's just like, hey, you're going to work for me because I'm the Silent King. And at first, Imhotep goes, absolutely. That sounds like a good idea, boss man. And we'll come back to that one later. But then an important thing happens. The fall of Cadia.
Never over it.
Yes, when the planet shattered, it had black stone pylons on it that were helping keep the Eye of Terror contained. Knowing that they made black stone pylons now, it means that previously the Necrons had sort of like dammed the materium, like the galaxy, out of the warp so that it wasn't overflowing the galaxy. And when that breaks, it starts a chain reaction, opening up the Great Rift, right? The huge rift that you see in the current setting that's causing all of these problems happens because of the fall of Cadia. Seeing this happen, the Silent King goes, oh, that's so much worse. This is terrible. And then starts creating something called the Pariah Nexus with his cryptex, which is a warp null zone made out of blackstone pylons to create his central base of his new empire that is impenetrable with warp travel. Demons can't exist there. Just if it's warp, it doesn't happen here. And it's to such a degree that if you're a warp-based species, you struggle to exist in here. So, like, you will lose a lot of... It's like you're being affected by a psychic blank. Mm-hmm. So, like, librarians will probably just have their heads explode. Normal humans go there and are just like, they feel sick, they feel upset, they're more irritable.
Because even though you aren't a psyker, you have a soul, you are connected to the warp without even knowing until someone cuts you off.
Yes. So it is not a good time there. This is a problem for the Imperium, because where the Pariah Nexus is in the middle of the Imperium. This is not like on the fringe. Like, this is right here. If this continues to expand, it will now split an empire that's already been split once in half, again, in a third. Meaning that Macragge would be separate from Terra, which would be separate from the northern sector. It would be terrible.
And you couldn't even travel between Macragge and Terra because you can't warp travel through the Nexus because there's no warp energy there. So there goes faster than light travel.
And you would then have to take a longer journey up above the galactic y-axis and then down back below. But that's dangerous because the Tyranids are up there and have been consuming the people. So, Guilliman, knowing this, sees that this is a huge threat to his logistics. The thing that he loves, deeply and desperately, more than his elf mommy, is logistics. It's Excel spreadsheets. This upsets his whole express.
His Factorio game is a danger. I mean, like, fatal, mortal danger.
So, after the Great Crusade, he starts directing and shifting forces to go deal with the Pariah Nexus, including himself. Like, he is just now done fighting Mortarion and the Death Guard, so he is going to start coming in from Macragge towards the Pariah Nexus to try to handle the situation via diplomacy with the Silent King or war if he has to. But he makes it very clear he is willing to negotiate with the Silent King. Because he would like to solve something without violence for once.
And not only because he's, by God, got so many other places he needs the boots and bullets to go.
Exactly. And then another character is on his way there as well, which is Belisarius Cawl, who is a character that has been trying to determine why the Blackstone pylons work, to try to recreate a version that doesn't affect humans, but does affect demons and chaos. He wants to be able to try to create Cadia again. He wants to try to push the rift back. He wants to try to improve the situation and push technology forward. So he is going to go to Pariah Nexus to try to learn or steal these secrets if possible, seeing the opportunity that these massively intellectual robots have for extending humanity's capabilities.
Particularly in this time with this unique threat that they are facing down. This would have been tempting any time during the setting and the lore for these two characters, but right now it is pivotal to trying to get just a crumb of stability for the Imperium.
Yeah, and as that's all going on, right, Leviathan is invading from the west again, which we just found out at the beginning of this edition, 10th edition, that Leviathan is coming from the west and is trying to dominate and take over and head to Terra. That's happening as Belisarius Cawl and Guilliman are heading to Pariah Nexus, meaning they cannot help with this defense. Terra could fall. And that's when not Constantine Valdor. I wish it was Constantine Valdor.
God, give me Constantine Valdor. No, it's Trajan Valoris.
Trajan Valoris and the Lord Solar Leontis go deal with that.
Dollar General Constantine Valdor. Best value. Constantine Valdor.
Best value, Constantine Valdor. They have to go deal with this to the west. Now, knowing that this now has to be an urgent handling, Guilliman is speeding towards it and is being much less cautious, which means invariably this will end up in war. What he wanted to be diplomacy cannot be found over the course of the years and months. This has to be solved now. So he's going to end up going to war against the Necrons. And that's where we're leaving off there from the Imperium side. But internally, there is something different going on. Because in a straight-up fight, the Imperium probably loses.
Oh, yeah.
The Silent King is effectively a god. He has extreme technology outside of the Imperium's capability. They have a force of, an army that can regenerate and keep coming back within reason. But, it's a problem, logistically,
and
for the Imperium.
Can teleport functionally from wherever they are to wherever they need to be using these portals, which takes the logistics out.
And on top of that, they don't require food, they don't require rest, they don't require all of these other things, so they just have so much stacked in their favor against the Imperium. The Imperium will probably lose. The Imperium will not gain a whole lot, even if they do destroy the Pariah Nexus. It will be at a huge loss. And that math doesn't math. Except now, there's an internal struggle. Imhotep the Stormlord is rebelling against the Silent King, seeing the Silent King as being this soft, negligent leader that left them to rot and doesn't believe that he has the right to rule them anymore, wants to take over as leader to dominate the galaxy. He believes that wiping the galaxy clean of the living and staying in these bodies is the best way for the race to continue, and to try to find a way to create more of themselves through the transference of, like, the biotransference, and force other races to join them and through that way as well. The Silent King disagrees. Instead, wants to free all of his people from these robotic bodies into organic bodies to redeem himself for the mistakes of his past. And now he has to deal with this upstart king, an invading army, and he still hasn't dealt with the Tyranid threat that is taking advantage of the situation to try to decimate the galaxy. And it is a perfect place for a faction in Warhammer 40k to be sitting in, to be getting some juicy, juicy lore.
Yeah, and also just like if you're thinking about creating Necrons, that gives you something to start with when you're making your own little dynasty, your own little subfaction. You know, would they be backing the Silent King? Would they be backing Imhotep the Stormlord? If they back either of them, why are they doing it? What are their goals? Are they maybe going to turn on whoever they're currently backing? Like, the amount of narrative you could write for your own forces here is amazing. Stellar.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of, like, I think a lot of times in factions, it's very monolithic in, like, the way they act. In Necrons, there's so many different ways they have gone that it's not that way. And because it's a more recent change, I think there's a lot more that we're going to see extend forward. It's not going to stay stagnant. I think that's a benefit. I think Tau are similarly like that with this. Tyranids as well, also. Like, they're all those Xenos races that are just like, we're fresh and new. We're not rooted in, like, 140 books or whatever.
Although now, that is the thing I want to end on, though, that there are some cool Necron books that if you listen to this and you're like, wow, they're interesting, I want to hear more. They, for a long, long time, had almost nothing. Now, though, they are getting novels. And some of them are bangers.
I will highly suggest 2. There's the Twice Dead King, which starts a whole series. It's very good. And if you want a fun time, that is lots of good chuckles, but also just a good book. The Infinite and the Divine, also a phenomenal book.
The way Infinite and Divine has been summarized to me is it's like Warhammer 40k, but you're getting an interlude with the 2 Muppets, Stettler and Waldorf, like shooting jabs from up in their box seats. That's the whole book. Like, it's 2 Necrons shooting jabs at everyone around them. The entire time.
We didn't even get to talk about Trazen the Infinite. He's going to get his whole episode.
God, that man has way too much that he has done. Yeah, we cannot make him a footnote. But they're not just novels, but they're good. So I highly recommend you check them out if you want to learn more. It will give you a deep dive into some first-person perspectives in the faction and sort of get you rolling. And for us, I mean, that's where we end the general lore. However, we might circle back later and start to dig deeper into some of these more particular dynasties in the future. But now the Codex cycle is a-rolling, and we gotta keep up. For now, though, it's been all of our opinions, bona fide, and Kentucky Fried. We'll see you guys on the next one.